in this class, we are going to learn much more about the different terminologies, especially in the pharmacokinetics, and also the terms related to the biotransformation and many more. So coming to the first thing, there are varieties of the barriers in the body to the drugs. So the drugs cannot penetrate to all the sites or all the tissues in the body. The important examples of this thing is the brain. So to prevent the penetration of drug into brain and cerebrospinal fluid, blood-brain barrier is there. And to prevent the drugs to get access into milk, blood-milk barrier is there. And apart from this one, to control the damage on the fetus from the drug, blood placental barrier, blood testicular barriers, etc., they are there in the body. So only selective drugs can penetrate into the brain, cerebrospinal fluid, placenta, etc., with selective permeability. So here the blood-brain barrier is a barrier between the brain and the regular bloodstream. So it is not like a sieve, so that the drugs are going to be filtered, but it is having the, see, this is the usual capillary system. This is, suppose this is a capillary. These are all the capillary endothelial cells with the nucleus, and in between these two cells, especially in the peripheral tissues or endothelial cells or usually capillary cells, do have the intracellular space, means they are loosely attached intracellular space, whereas the brain cells or brain capillaries do have the tight junctions. Here you can see two endothelial cells have joined together with tight junction, and this one is a basement membrane is there outside this outside the capillary in case of the blood-brain barrier, whereas it is inside the capillary in the regular tissue. I think you are getting. So the number one, the difference between the usual capillary cells and blood-brain barrier capillary cells is, so here the loose junctions are there, and the outer coat astrocytes is present on the outer side of the capillary, whereas it is present inside the capillary in the regular tissues. So usually the lipid soluble drugs are only going to pass through the endothelial cells of the brain, because the outer tight junctions cannot be penetrated so easily, whereas this is known as the glial cell processes or choroidal epithelium. This outer membrane is known as the this also becomes the barrier, and only lipid soluble molecules can penetrate through this thing. Suppose the drug is inside this particular capillary. This is the cross section of a capillary of regular and the brain tissue, and the drugs can pass through this particular intracellular pores, whereas it is very difficult to pass. See, we will see what are all the other conditions in which the blood-brain barrier is not going to allow the drugs. Yeah, to simplify further, the blood-brain barrier is like just like this is a single, what you call as the capillary. Thousands of such capillaries are present in the brain, and this is the tight junction. So this is the endothelial cell. So in between the endothelial cells, the junctions are very tight, and this one is called as the astrocytic end feet. So it is surrounded by the special cells known as the astrocytic sites, and because of this thing, the regular drugs, unless it's a highly lipid soluble drug, this cannot pass into the outer tissues and act on the receptors. That's how the concept of blood-brain barrier. And here also you can see that this is the pore passage in between two endothelial cells. In case of a capillary, the junction is not tight here, and the lipid soluble as well as the water soluble drugs can pass through this. Whereas the blood-brain barrier has got very tight junction here, very tight junction, and the supporting astrocytes are also surrounding this particular blood capillaries. So the usual normal drugs with the what you call as the water solubility and other thing, they cannot pass through the blood-brain barrier capillaries. It's a capillary endothelial system surrounded by the astrocytes, which in which there is tight junction of the endothelial cells is present. That's simply what a blood-brain barrier is. To repeat again, the blood-brain barrier is a capillary endothelial system present in the nervous system, which allows only lipid soluble drugs to be passed to the brain. So this is one of the protective mechanism to the brain tissue is concerned, because or else all the drugs which are ingested by the human being or the animal being, then they will be passed into the brain and will cause the damage to the brain. So here the highly lipid soluble drugs like the thiopental sodium or the chloramphenicol and many more drugs can only pass through the blood-brain barrier. And whenever this is blood-brain barrier is damaged in the conditions of inflammation, of CNS inflammation, and the other drugs can also pass, like penicillins, etc. They can pass. So here it's still more clear. So the blood is containing this type of the what you call as the inner lumen. This is the inner lumen, and this is an endothelial cell, and these are the pericytes and astrocytes. It is tightly surrounded by the pericytes and astrocytes. So these are all the parts of the neuronal tissues. That's how only the lipid soluble drugs, they can pass through these particular capillary endothelial cells and get into the surrounding tissues. Hope you got the particular point. Here, this is an explanation of what you call as the endothelial cells, especially the upper blood vessels. Here you can see that normal. So especially in case of brain, so this is the thing. Here a very tight endothelial systems are there, and here you can this water molecule can pass through the in between the capillaries. Yeah, this is coffee is also it's been then yes. And another thing is the lipid soluble molecules, and bigger molecules cannot pass, and the lipid soluble molecules can only pass through this blood-brain barrier. So that's how the nervous system is protected from the action of the drugs. And both this blood-brain barrier and blood what you call as CSF barriers are lipoidal and limit the entry of non-lipid soluble drugs or lipid soluble, and they prevent the what you call as the entry of these non-lipid soluble drugs. Only lipid soluble drugs can pass through the blood-brain barrier. The example, the drugs which cannot pass through the blood-brain barrier are streptomycin, neostigmine, hexamethonium, etc. That's why they are not going to act on the central nervous system disorders. And only lipid soluble drugs are able to penetrate and have action on the central nervous system. So you cannot make all the drugs to pass through the blood-brain barrier. So the drugs like aspirin and many other things we are going to consume in the day-to-day life are not going to the brain, but they are going to the kidneys and the joints wherever it is possible. So that's how our brain or the animal's brain is protected from the action of the drugs. So only lipid soluble drugs can pass through. So most of the anesthetics which we have giving either inhalation route or intravenous route, like these morphine derivatives and the pentobarbitons or barbiturates are highly lipid soluble in layer in their property, and they pass the blood-brain barrier and blood-CSF barrier. So the efflux carriers like P-glycoprotein present in the brain capillary endothelial cells. So these are the P-glycoproteins. So these P glycoproteins are also present in intestinal, mucosal, renal tubular, hepatic canalicular tissue, placental and testicular cells. So these exclude many drugs that enter the brain by other process. So some of the drugs they will pass even though they are not lipid soluble, they are by the carrier mediated mechanism. They are passing to the brain and other tissues like renal tubular tissues, hepatic, canalicular tissues, placenta and testicular tissues. These are all having the barriers. So the P glycoprotein, it will act as a carrier molecule to carry many other drugs which are also not lipid soluble. And dopamine does not enter brain. Dopamine does not enter brain, but its precursor, levodopa, enters. So dopamine, even though it is a drug that acts on the central nervous system, it is not going to enter the brain, but its a precursor, levodopa, is converted to dopamine with the help of the dopa decarboxylase enzyme, and thus this is going to cause the CNS inhibition action. And inflammation of meninges, this is somewhat important because inflammation of meninges or brain increases permeability of these barriers, especially this tight junction will get damaged by the inflammation, and at that time the drugs are going to pass into the blood-brain barrier and enter the brain. For example, in case of the meningitis, which is caused by so many microorganisms, then what happens? The damage to blood-brain barrier happens and the drugs are going to pass through. That's why the streptomycin and penicillin in combination, they are the drug of choices, especially in the meningitis. And another barrier is blood placental barrier. This barrier is in between the growing calf and the mother, or the fetus or the mother. And this is known as the blood placental barrier, and the placental membranes are lipoidal and allow free passage of the lipophilic drugs while restricting the hydrophilic drugs. Very similar to that of the blood-brain barrier. Blood placental barriers are going to allow only lipid-soluble drugs and allow free passage of lipophilic drugs, whereas these water-soluble drugs are not going to pass through the blood placental barrier. The placental efflux, especially once again, the P glycoprotein also serves to limit fetal exposure to maternally administered drug. So most of the time, this is one of the protective mechanism, how the womb or the fetus is protected from the unwanted drugs or toxins. So usually the placental efflux system means placental carrier system P glycoprotein is there, and it serves as a limitation to fetal exposure to maternally administered drug, or otherwise many type of the toxicities, especially the aminoglycosides, etc. They would have caused toxicities in the fetus, and the fetal kidney would have been damaged. Because of the presence of blood placental barrier, it is being protected. But what happens? Restricted amount of non-lipid soluble drugs, when present in high concentration for long periods in maternal circulation, gain access to the fetus. So here, some of the time what happens, even though the drug is non-lipid soluble or water soluble, if it is administered for prolonged period, if a non-lipid soluble drug administered for prolonged period and in high concentration, it will pass the blood placental barrier and get access to the fetus. Thus, it is an incomplete barrier. This is an incomplete barrier when compared to the blood-brain barrier, and almost any drug taken by the mother can affect the fetus or the newborn. And drug taken just before the delivery, just like morphine, it's going to pass through the blood placental barrier and suppress the CNS system of the baby. So this is once again, you may be surprising how it is the fetus is protected from the unwanted drug administration. Many times in the label, you may be seeing that this is CI in P, means this drug is contraindicated in pregnancy. So many such type of the labels are there while preparing the drugs. The manufacturer is going to insert such leaflet. So the blood, when compared to the blood-brain barrier, blood-placental barrier is little incomplete because high concentration of the drug for prolonged period will pass that capillary endothelial system. And here you can see this is the fetal side, this is the fetus, then this is the mother side. Here this is the capillary system or chorionic villi cross section is there, and this is the maternal blood is going to flow, and cytoplasm, endothelial cells and nucleus, these are the nucleus. So here also the same type of the surrounding system is there, but it is not so well organized when compared to the what you call as the brain is concerned. It is present in the placental blood circulatory system usually. So here also only lipid soluble drugs can pass, whereas the water soluble drugs are not going to pass. And another difference between the blood brain barrier and blood placental barrier is it is not having the what you call as the astrocytes, the neuronal tissue is not here because and whenever this is just like a filtration system for the drugs. And another important terminology is plasma protein binding. Yes, this we have to study in case of pharmacokinetics, because any drug which we have administered through any route of the administration, it is going to absorb into the circulation. Then when it gets absorbed into circulation, it is going to bind with that of the plasma proteins. So most drugs possesses physicochemical affinity for plasma proteins, and most of the drugs administered, they are having the affinity towards the varieties of plasma proteins. In the plasma, many proteins are there. So the what you call as the drugs will have the affinity towards these plasma proteins. This binding between the plasma proteins and the drug is known as plasma protein binding. It's a very common phenomenon. And acidic drugs can generally bind to plasma albumin, and basic drugs are plasma glycoprotein. So in plasma, there are varieties of the proteins are present. One is the plasma albumin and another one is the plasma acid glycoprotein or plasma globulin. So this binding to albumin is quantitatively more important. Usually the first one, binding to albumin. So plasma albumin binding is somehow important because it is what you call as the, if you go to the examples, you can see this sulfamethazine, a sulfur drug is binding to the extent of 30% to the plasma protein and 70% of the drug is free, whereas the sulfadiazine is binding with the plasma protein to the extent of 50%, and the 50% of the drug is free for acting in the tissue. And sulfamethoxazole is binding to the extent of 60%, and here if 60% plasma protein binding means 40% drugs are free in nature, and sulfamethoxazole it's going to bind to the extent of 90%. See, the thing is, so whenever the drug is bound to plasma protein, its biological availability or bioavailability will be less. Only the free drug is going to act on the receptors, whereas the bound drug will be bounded to plasma proteins and circulating in the blood. So, but the bonding between the plasma proteins and the drugs is not a permanent bonding, and as in time processes, the bond becomes loose and the drugs become free and they are available for the action. And clinical significance of plasma protein binding, why it is important, why the plasma protein binding, how it matters in respect of the drug action is, highly plasma protein bound drugs are largely restricted to the vascular compartment. Means, suppose a drug is having very high affinity towards the plasma globulins, immediately after the injection they are going and binding with the plasma proteins. So they are not available for the free distribution to the tissue, and so that's why in the blood only they will be circulating. They are not available for the tissue binding. The bound fraction is not available. Always it is not available for action. Whereas the high degree of protein binding generally makes the drug long acting because bound fraction is not available for metabolism or excretion. So this is a very true thing in case of certain drugs like ivermectin. Ivermectin is a endectoparasiticide drug. So it is given by the intramuscular or oral route. What happens? The half-life of the ivermectin is about 14 days, such a long half-life. If the half-life of the oxytocin is just 7 minutes, whereas the half-life of the what you call as the penicillin is just 6 to 10 hours and minutes, etc. Whereas the half-life of the ivermectin is 14 days because one is the plasma protein binding and another one is the enterohepatic circulation. So because of this thing, it is becoming the fast half-life drug. And there, since these two drugs are not available for the excretion, then the half-life is long. So one drug can bind to many sites on the albumin molecule. So conversely, more than one drug can bind to the same site in a plasma albumin. So plasma albumin is having different binding sites on its surface. It's a larger molecule when compared to the drug, and the drug can bind to many sites on the albumin molecule. And conversely, more than one drugs can bind to the same site. And this can give rise to displacement interactions among drugs bound to the same sites. So here what happens? For a single site, there will be competition between two drugs since they are going to bind with the same site of binding. So the earlier drug can get replaced when the new drug enters into the circulation. The example of this thing is the phenylbutazone. Phenylbutazone is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agent, and salicylates are also non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agent. When they are administered together, they displace the tolbutamide, a drug which is acting on the trachea, tolbutamide and sulbutamide, etc. So here the bronchodilators, etc. action. So if you simultaneously administer phenylbutazone and tolbutamide, so the tolbutamide get displaced from its binding sites, and more quantity is available at the site of the action. That's simply you can see that whenever the phenylbutazone and tolbutamide are simultaneously absorbed, the action of the tolbutamide will be more, whereas the phenylbutazone is going to displace tolbutamide from its binding site. And indomethacin, phenylbutazone displace warfarin. What's warfarin? Warfarin is a anticoagulant rodenticide. So we should not administer any of such NSAIDs if the animal is suspected to have the warfarin poisoning. Suppose if you administer the phenylbutazone and indomethacin, then what happens? The warfarin, which is bounded to plasma albumin, get replaced, and the toxicity is going to increase. That's how the mechanism gets. So that's the importance of the plasma protein binding. And in here we can see many of the drugs are bound to plasma albumin. That's suppose in case of the albumin, suppose protein deficiency to the animal, then binding may be reduced and high concentration of flea drug may be attained. So you have to think twice whenever you are administering a drug to an animal which is having hypoproteinemia, because here plasma albumin is very less. The drug cannot bind to the plasma proteins. So the free drug is available for action. So then the dose need to be reduced. That's why the clinical significance of the plasma protein binding is more and more. So here there are varieties of the drugs bound to plasma protein. Here this plasma protein, once again albumin and alpha-1 acid glycoprotein. Two proteins are there, plasma proteins. So to this one, especially the albumins, the drugs which are going to bind are the barbiturates, benzodiazepines, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, the valproic acid, or the phenytoin, anti-epileptic agent. Then the penicillins, sulfonamides, tetracyclines, tolbutamide, and warfarin. These are all the agents which are going to bind with that of the plasma albumin. So we should not give these drugs together, because the phenytoin, if it is administered with barbiturate, and if the concentration of barbiturate is more and more, then it will compete with the binding scent of the, what you call as the phenylbutazone, then the concentration becomes more, or phenytoin concentration becomes more, and animal get that increased effect of the valproic acid. Whereas it is the same type of the examples, most of the beta blockers like metoprolol and enalapril, etc., and bupivacaine, lignocaine, and all these drugs like methadone, triosine, quinidine, and verapamil. Verapamil is a calcium channel blocker. So these are bonded to alpha-1 acid glycoprotein. Varieties of the proteins are there. So these are all the two many drugs which are bonded to either albumin or alpha-1 acid glycoprotein. And here you can see this is a case in which the drug is plasma protein bound and non-plasma protein bound. And here you can see the drug is not bound to the what you call as the plasma proteins, and hence through this capillary endothelial system, this gap, it is going to come out and bind with the receptors on the effector cells and do the action. And ultimately the this biotransformation of the drugs which are loosely bounded to plasma protein or not bounded to plasma protein is very fast, because it is going to the kidneys and going to be biotransformed to the active metabolite, or passive, this inactive metabolites becomes more water soluble and get excreted through kidney. So here the free drug is very high in the circulation. Free drug is very high in the circulation. That's why it's important. And another thing is the drug is strongly bound to plasma proteins. What happens if a drug, here the tablet is located by the tablet, then what happens is since the binding between the plasma albumin or P glycoprotein, now the glycoprotein, then it is not free for the extrusion out of these capillaries, and it is not going to act on the effector cells. Whereas it is also not available for the biotransformation, or if it's available also, only the free form of the drug is available. And compared to this particular excretion, here is, you can see the drug has excreted very fastly within few what you call as units of the hours, whereas here the particular excretion of the drug is slow. So here there are two forms of the drugs are there. One is the free drug and another one is the bound drug. Bound drug, it takes longer time to get dissociated from the body or excreted from the body, whereas the plasma unbound drugs are very fastly excreted from the